to the B20-G20 dialogue on women empowerment, the final event of the B20 Special Initiative on women empowerment. I am very pleased to introduce our B20 Italy Chair, Mrs. Emma Marcegaglia, for a welcome address. Please.
Good morning, everyone. So, Honorable Minister Bonetti, Honorable Minister Messa, my dear Diana, dear Shinta, dear B20 members and distinguished guests. I'm really happy and honored to open this B20-G20 dialogue organized by the B20 Special Initiative on Women Empowerment. The B20-G20 dialogue, and we are organizing several of them, are really key opportunities for business for sure, but also I hope for the G20 presidency to share priorities and objectives and to prepare all of us adequately for the challenges and opportunities of the next decades. And let me really thank Minister Bonetti and Minister Messa to take the time to be with us today. In the frame of the Italian B20, I have strongly advocated for the opportunity to dedicate a special initiative to the themes of gender parity and inclusion. And today's dialogue will take stock of the proceeding of the special initiative to publicly discuss its policy proposal, also having a view at the work carried out by the B20 Saudi presidency, which I thank for having initiated this important priority cluster within the B20 process. And I really hope that also the next B20 will continue to strongly focus on this point. The B20 pursues common values and goals through the work of over 2,000 representatives, including all major international corporations, representing a community of over 6.5 million businesses. Our claim is reshape the future, include, share, and act. And by this, we want really to make clear and concrete recommendation to the G20 presidency for to go back to work, growth, but a growth which has to be different from the previous one, so more inclusive and more sustainable. Navigating the B20 in a conjuncture like the current one is a demanding exercise, and all B20 members have taken up very seriously. So I'm proud of the commitment and attention that we have gathered across the G20 countries, and I really look forward the B20 to result in a really impactful processes contributing to the best outcome of the G20 Italy. And as I said before, our aim is really to convey very clear, concrete recommendation. We will also use some KPI to measure the execution of our recommendation. And of course, we also want to commit strongly as business to really reshape the future, as I said before. Indeed, we are ultimately looking for a true partnership where the private and the public sector maximize the deployment of their potential. I'm confident that today's discussion will enrich all of us. I will not go into details of today's important topics, but however, I would like to offer a few remarks before the discussion starts. The first remark that I want to underline is that there is a strong need to counteract the effect of the pandemic on women participation in the workforce. Women's employment was reduced by 2.2 million across the EU during the first wave of the pandemic. This is a huge number. Women being disproportionately present in the sector highly affected by the COVID-19 have been consistently hit harder across countries, age groups, and lifestyle indicators. As a matter of fact, in comparison to men, women continue to face higher risk of economic insecurity. Furthermore, women are more involved in the so-called unpaid jobs. On average, in the EU 28, almost all employed women, about 94% of the total, are involved in at least one unpaid care work activity, compared with 70% of employed men. So this is the first point. The second is that the perception and cultural barriers keep still women locked out of STEM roles. away from developing the skill requested by high growth sectors. In fact, less than 30% of the world's researchers are women. Only 7% of women choose to study engineering, math, statistics, and natural sciences compared to 22% of men. Women hold only 16% of managerial positions in the IT industry and just 3% of CEO roles in this sector. My third remarks concern the positive aspects of women leadership. Women entrepreneurs have a significant influence on their economies. They launch and grow businesses, create and sell innovative products and services, and take part at every level in international trade. And they are normally more open and more committed to the most important key elements and key problems that now we are trying to face, which is climate change from one side and inclusion, social inclusion on the other side. As B20, we must strengthen initiatives that actively support women entrepreneurship and women's skills, such as the Women's Entrepreneurship Development Program at the International Labour Organization and the 100 Expert Project launched by the Bracco Foundation to actively fight stereotypes and biases. And it is indeed Diana Bracco that I really want to thank warmly for her outstanding leading role in the special initiative on women empowerment of our B20, but also not only for this role, but for all her life, what she has done in her in her company, but also in her role, in her, let's say, public roles that she really have in the past years. Diana will wrap up the dialogue, introducing the special initiative on women's empowerment recommendation. I'm sure that this will be of guidance to truly help us in achieving gender parity and inclusion. Thank you very much for your attention, and I really wish you a fruitful session and discussion. Thank you very much.
I'd like to say a brief word because I want to thank on behalf of everyone Emma Marcegaglia, an entrepreneur and an outstanding woman who was a brilliant president of Confindustria and is now doing a wonderful job leading the B20. Thank you, Emma, for your advocacy for women, and thank you for wanting to dedicate a special initiative of the Italian B20 to the issues of equality and gender inclusion in society and in the workplace. I have been honored to work beside you on this challenge.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Diana.
So thank you. So we can start today's dialogue. With three broad interconnected pillars of actions, people, planet, prosperity, the Italian G20 presidency is looking beyond the crisis towards ensuring a rapid recovery. This implies a focus on reducing inequalities, especially on the younger generation and on women's empowerment. We are therefore very honored to welcome Ms. Elena Bonetti, Italian Minister for Equal Opportunities and Family, for her opening remarks. So please, Madam Minister.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, President Bracco, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm honored and delighted to participate to this event, and I wish to thank Emma Marcegaglia, Chair of the B20, and Diana Bracco, Ambassador for B20 Women, for inviting me today. Let me start by welcoming the creation of this special initiative on women's empowerment and gender equality in the business arena. This initiative is of key importance in that it recognizes how crucial gender mainstreaming is today. We know that there is an urgent need to work towards equality in every field. We also know that each small step forward in one area can trigger changes in other areas. This is, of course, particularly true in the business community. The first challenge is to improve the level and the numbers of women, both in the labor market in general and more specifically in enterprise. A key tool in achieving this is, of course, the roadmap towards the Brisbane goal that, as you know, was recently approved by the G20 labor ministers together with the Catania Declaration. The roadmap provides women's entrepreneurship through measures to eliminate all legal, political, and procedural barriers that prevent women from expressing their full potential in business. And it is exactly these barriers that, together, we must remove as public institutions and as businesses. Working together will enable us to develop reciprocal support. Where political guidance fails, good business practice will intervene, and at the same time, public measures will positively impact the work of companies. And an important step in this direction is your special initiative policy document with your 3 recommendations. 1, we must include women in the labor market to shape the future. 2, we must reimagine our society, removing stereotypes and discriminations. 3, we must grow together, releasing women's talent and leadership. This G20 is taking place in a period of deep crisis. We are still feeling the weight of the terrible effects of the pandemic. Women are the worst hit. Women are suffering the full burden of the COVID-19 economic crisis, especially in terms of job losses. Speaking as a minister, I know that governments must do everything in their power to build back, and to build back with a gender-balanced approach to eradicate the gender gap. An important element in this is the commitment to fuel the pipeline of women's talent in STEM subjects and in innovation processes. The Italian government is fully engaged in this direction. The support for women's entrepreneurship has always been a cornerstone of the empowerment policies implemented in Italy. In this context, let me highlight Italy's National Recovery and Resilience Plan for Next Generation EU. This groundbreaking plan provides specific investment to support women in business. The plan also establishes an innovative national system for the certification of gender equality in the workplace. This system will support and encourage companies to reduce the gender gap in growth opportunities, to ensure equal pay for equal tasks, to implement policies to improve work-life balance, and to empower women also during and after maternity. In addition, I am proud to have been responsible for the first Italian strategy for gender equality. This strategy was created after wide consultation with all stakeholders and across all levels of government. It will finally give a comprehensive perspective to policies for women and their empowerment. Moving back to the international level, we all know that we must eradicate stereotypes and remove all barriers in order to put an end to gender-based discrimination. We must foster a corporate ecosystem which includes diversity and promotes gender equality, equal pay, flexible work policies, family leave, social dialogue, family welfare measures, training, mentoring, and sponsorship are all powerful tools to succeed. These issues will take center stage at the G20 Ministerial Conference on Women's Empowerment. As a Minister for Equal Opportunities and Family, I strongly urge the G20 to host for the first time this specific ministerial event dedicated to women's empowerment. All the points emerging from the various working tables and engagement groups of the G20, and in particular the recommendations produced by the B20, will prove to be of crucial importance and inestimable value in this endeavor. There has never been a more opportune moment to press for these changes, to fulfill our commitment to inclusion, empowerment, and equality for women. The partnering of business and government can ensure concrete, actionable proposals to achieve this goal. Together, we can make our vision a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Minister. Thank you very much. There is a strong consistency between your work and the B20's one of the special initiative. So thank you so much. Now it's time to move to the next speaker. So the response to the key challenge of women empowerment must be based on sound economic and social analysis to stimulate and to produce evidence-based policies and to monitor progress in a global perspective. That's why we have invited Mr. Stefano Scarpetta, who is leading the important work of OECD in the field of employment, labor and social affairs. He will set the scene for today's dialogue. Stefano, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Honorable Minister, Madam Chair, friends and colleagues, thank you for the invitation to this important event. We know that the path toward gender equality will be faster if all actors work together. Bringing together businesses and government in these B20-G20 dialogues on women empowerment is part of this crucial effort to bring together governments and business to work towards this common goal. Let me start by saying that significant progress has been made in women's empowerment. G20 government and businesses should be commended for the leadership they have shown in pursuing policies and practices that have promoted gender equality. As of 2019, just before the COVID-19 crisis, young women were more likely to be highly educated than young men in most of the G20 countries. In nearly all G20 economies, the labor force participation rate of women aging between 15 and 64 increased between 2012 and 2019, making good progress towards the G20 25 by 25 Brisbane target. Women have also been able to take more on leadership roles, both in public life and in business too. The average number of women in parliamentarians in OECD countries rose from 20% in 2000 to 30% in 2019, while the female share of seats on boards of the largest publicly listed companies rose by 4 percentage points between 2016 and 2020 to reach 27%. So we are on the right track, but progress so far has been too slow given the major challenges we still face to really close the gender gap. In G20 countries, the gender pay gap, for example, is still in between 10 and 40%. Women account for only 15 to maximum 45% of all managerial jobs. And the share of women in self-employment is on average 7.5 percentage points lower than that of men. Women also face less secure employment than men. The share of women, for example, in the informal employment is far greater than that of men in many of the G20 economies, and women employees are more likely to be on temporary contracts, so more precarious forms of employment than men. In what is likely to be a bumpy recovery from the COVID-19 crisis, we need renewed effort together to speed up the progress towards gender equality. In 2020, the COVID-19 crisis put a halt, for example, on the trend rise in women labor force participation that we have observed in between 2012 and 2019. Except in Germany, the United Kingdom, and Russia, the labor force participation for women fell in between 2019, just before the COVID, to 2020 in all countries for which the data are available. In Argentina, in Brazil, in Mexico, South Africa, Turkey, women's labor force participation fell by 3 percentage points or more. At the global level, the ILO estimates that employment loss for women was 5% globally in 2020 compared to 3.9% for men. Labor force participation has picked up in the late 2020 and at the beginning of 2021 for women and for men, but the number of people in work has remained below the pre-pandemic levels in most of the G20 economies. We also cannot forget what goes on outside the workplace. Despite years of growth in the number of women in paid work, gender roles in unpaid work have remained remarkably rigid. In all G20 economies where comparable data are available, women spend far more time than men in unpaid work, for about 1 hour every day in Canada to nearly 5 hours more daily in India. Even in couples with 2 full-time earners, women often do far more household work and childcare than men. Evidence suggests that during the COVID-19 crisis, women took on a greater share of childcare, homeschooling, and domestic tasks when the schools were actually closed. Progress towards women empowerment and making up for the setbacks brought about by the COVID-19 crisis will require concerted and committed action. The report Women at Work in G20 countries that we prepare together with the ILO and actually OECD work suggests that 4 areas are needed, both from the business side but also from the government side. First and foremost, policy to promote women's labor force participation. Many G20 countries have been taking steps to help women stay in the labor force even when they have young children at home. Korea, for example, spent $84 million on employment support services for mothers who have suspended economic activities due to childcare or have never been in employment and took a job. In 2016, France established a network of 100 early childhood care facilities for children of unemployed parents. Australia, Canada, Japan, Mexico, Turkey, and the United States have also used cash transfers programs to help parents pay for childcare. 7 G20 countries have supported employment creation for women throughout a number of subsidies. For example, the Republic of Korea provided cash subsidies for employers that immediately re-employ mothers whose fixed-term contract expired during the period of pregnancy, childbirth, or childcare leave. Saudi Arabia increased the budget allocated to a program that provides for 20% salary subsidies to employers for every woman employed. Second, G20 countries must continue to take initiative to improve the quality of women's earnings and help close the gender wage gap. The focus on job quality on women was also at the center of the G20 Labour Ministerial that took place in Catania just a month ago. One way to do this will be focusing on promoting women in STEM studies, but also in STEM occupations. The United States, for example, has been encouraging women to pursue studies in STEM fields and help women candidates to find an appropriate internship program at the end of their studies. A growing number of G20 countries have also passed legislation that prohibit unequal pay for equal work. For example, new pay equity legislation that came into force in Canada in 2021. Germany, awareness-raising campaign, for example, informs and advises companies on measures to achieve equal pay work for equal value. And some countries, like Australia, but also France, require disclosure on gender pay gaps. Third policy priority, in my view, should be reducing the gender gap in top leadership positions, both in the public but also in the private sector. Company leadership has been a key role to play here, including to the adoption of targets and metrics, diversity and inclusion policies, and the revision of recruitment and promotion policies and processes. And finally, changing the workplace culture is also key to a more efficient use of labor market resources and to promote inclusive growth. Beyond provisions to enhance gender diversity in decision-making in companies, employers also need to increase access to flexible workplace practices and make workplace cultures more conducive to parents using parental leave. As countries' business look forward to the COVID-19 recovery, all stakeholders need to consider how to integrate gender equality policies into broader policies and actually strategies. Continued monitoring of the pandemic differential impact between men and women will also be crucial to adapt policies as we move into the recovery. And we must redouble our effort to advance women's empowerment more generally. Now is really not the time to rest on the laurels of some progress that we have achieved before the COVID-19 crisis. government and business can and must really work together to make gender equality a reality in our lifetimes and fulfill the huge potential for economic growth, but also for a more cohesive, inclusive society. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Stefano. Thank you for your presentation and for outlining the areas of policy priorities to deliver women empowerment. We are now pleased to introduce Ms. Julie Sweet, Chief Executive Officer of Accenture. Julie and her Accenture team have been a key knowledge partner during this very exciting journey of our B20 Special Initiative on Women Empowerment that we call SIWE. Working with businesses in different environments at global level, Accenture knows very well the challenges and the opportunities linked to women empowerment issue. I would like to invite Julie to share her insight.
Hello, I'm Julie Sweet, the CEO of Accenture. Thank you to President Bracco for your leadership as chair of our task force, to all of you who have contributed to this work, and to Confindustria for managing today's event. We at Accenture are privileged to be your knowledge partner and to have experienced the power of this large group of companies and social partners from all over the world coming together to help drive lasting change. First, let me touch on the approach the task force has taken in the policy paper, and then share our perspective on the recommendations. With the release of this paper, the members of the task force should feel really proud that we've achieved the outcome we set out to achieve, to provide a clear and actionable pathway for leaders around the world to continue to break down the obstacles to women's empowerment. The framework used, include, reimagine, grow, is based on an extensive analysis of data, a clear articulation of concrete needs, and knowledge of the best practices to accelerate progress on gender equality. As I turn to our perspective on the recommendations themselves, let me start by saying this. Now is a critical time for this work, a time when companies, governments, and organizations are seeing the opportunity and the responsibility to reimagine and rebuild, and in doing so, transform our global economy into one that works for the benefit of all. I will share 3 critical lessons from our own women's empowerment work at Accenture, lessons that validate the important work of this task force and our policy recommendations. First, be transparent. We publish our goals because we want people to know we are serious and willing to hold ourselves accountable. You do not have to be in a great starting place, but if you're willing to share your numbers, people believe you want to change. The lesson, transparency creates trust. The call for transparency is crystal clear in each one of our policy actions. For example, be it using gender budgeting and recovery plans, to identifying and redressing unpaid labor, to establishing national targets for gender equality in senior decision-making roles. This task force has not only identified what the B20 needs to do to achieve transparency and trust, but has also definitively shown how. Second, treat equality like every other business priority. This means setting goals, measuring with data, clear accountability, and an execution plan. For Accenture in 2017, we set our public goal to achieve a gender-balanced workforce by 2025. Today, we are 569,000 people and 46% women. The lesson, what gets measured gets done. It is exceptional that this task force has identified KPIs for each of our 3 recommendations. KPIs which will be tracked by this year's B20 and by future B20s, so we can monitor and report on change over time. Third, do not do it alone. Have the courage and the humility to learn from each other, collaborate, and take collective action. The lesson, we are stronger together. This task force is a compelling and convincing example of the power of collaboration. These lessons also speak to the art of the possible and how our recommendations can create lasting positive change for women globally. Now is the time for us as leaders to be bold, act with urgency, and shift our work to advocacy. We must ensure our recommendations are not only discussed by broader audiences outside of the B20, but that the G20 government bodies make legislative, cultural, and financial changes based on them. Once again, thank you to my fellow members of the Special Initiative team. We are honored to be a part of this important work.
Perfetto.
Thank you. Women empowerment requires change, and change requires far-reaching strategy, as Julie Sweet just said. This strategy goes beyond the current B20 presidency. This is why B20 is working very closely with the Indonesian partners to find synergies that will allow the B20 in the next cycle to further develop work on women empowerment and, what's more important, to concretely monitor progress. That is why we are very honored to welcome today from Indonesia Ms. Shinta Kamdani, who will chair the B20 during the next presidency. Dear Shinta, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Elena Bonetti, the Minister for Equal Opportunities and Family, Italy. Emma Margaglia, the B20 Chair. Diana Bracco, the B20 Women Ambassador for Women Empowerment, our fellow G20 officials, B20 Italy members, distinguished panelists, and participants. Very good afternoon and evening from Indonesia virtually. Thank you for inviting me to join what I'm sure will be a great collaborative discussion on the critical policies and practices to accelerate women leadership and empowerment across the G20 countries. For so long, women have fought hard for women's right to equal opportunity in the economy, entrepreneurship, education, and politics. And right now, through the B20-G20 dialogue, we are finally having a seat to set the agenda, in which I'm honored to be part of this diverse and impactful discussion. Gender inclusivity in labor force participation may result in significant increases in per capita income. This is true all across the world, but particularly G20 countries. In fact, countries like Denmark, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden that managed to increase women employment rate have yielded results of 10 to 20% of average annual GDP per capita growth over the past 40 to 50 years. In addition, gender equality has a causal effect on real economic outcomes at the industrial level. A survey from Catalyst found that more than half Fortune 500 businesses who have significant women participation in senior leadership teams had a 35% better return on equity and a 34% higher overall shareholder return than male-dominated enterprises. So excluding women makes no economic sense. And women leadership in COVID-19 has proven to handle the crisis with 6 times fewer deaths than countries with government led by men. Hence, integrating women may be a huge step for not only economic recovery, but also health and social recovery globally. On to a year of the COVID-19 pandemic, we can plainly be aware of the stark economic and social effects that disproportionately affect women. First, women are overrepresented in the industry that have been worst impacted by the pandemic, where according to the World Economic Forum, women represent 39% of the global workforce, but accounted for 54% of job losses as of May 2020. Second, a large share of firms owned or managed by women are micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, posing a greater risk. This does not even account for informal sectors that have become the economic shelter of most women that are not covered by government assistance programs. Moreover, finding a job is much more difficult for women compared to men. And even when women find jobs, they tend to be employed in lower quality jobs in vulnerable conditions. In addition, many women have found themselves juggling to take unpaid work of caring for the family and elderly relative while trying to maintain their own professions. In fact, 1 in 4 women are considering leaving the workforce or downshifting their careers according to the latest research from McKinsey. Even more crucial, the pandemic has also highlighted the risk that most women have shared in the health sector, as they represent 70% of the workforce in the health and service sectors around the world. Without immediate actions, these challenges will lead to a massive decline of women from long-term unemployment, declining global trade productivity as a result of global factory shutdowns and job losses for women workforce in the global value chain firms, along with social disruption that dial back the progress made on gender equality. It is obvious that we must not let this happen. It is important to be noted that the advantages of gender inclusiveness are obvious, not just for women, but for everyone. I believe, however, that in adversity comes opportunity. The pandemic may create such huge challenges, but it also creates hopes for change and transformation for an even better future. Fortunately, a crucial component of the answer is there in front of us, unleashing the economic power of it as one of the world's most undervalued resources. More than ever, the way we are doing this through policy reforms, partnership, and shared action, in which all of this has been included in the B20 Italy Special Initiative on Women Empowerment. From bringing more women back into the workforce, building an inclusive society and workplace, to smoothing the road for women in business leadership and ownership. All of this recommendation can uplift countries to reach gender-inclusive economic growth. Ultimately, these policy recommendations are in line with what the next B20 Indonesia presidency is contemplating to achieve: innovative, inclusive, and collaborative growth with gender empowerment as the essential step to amplify post-pandemic development. This is why, as the first step, we will establish a Women in Business Action Council to address the gender gap. Therefore, in this sense, we emphasize 4 focus on gender empowerment. First, empowering women in the economy and closing gender gaps in the world of work. These include protecting and amending policies in social rights and creating level playing field for women to participate in as entrepreneurs and employment that also encompass the leadership and millennial women in startups, and women in small medium enterprises. Second, accelerate labor market reforms. These include expanding women access to the labor market, improving flexibility, and reducing informality, as well as making sure to bring women back into the workforce after the pandemic. Third, encourage the integration of gender statistics and sex disaggregated data in corporate reporting practices that gives company purpose and helps them set and socialize their top priorities. On the particular focus, we will also be working with G20 Empower to both advocate and set the standard of gender equality in the workplace. Lastly, building digital resilience and future skills to thrive post-pandemic, including upskilling women future skills and embracing technology, addressing the global gap in STEM and digital skills of women that will be critical in the workforce of the future. Nevertheless, we know reforming policy, building collaborative action can work, but these are not all mere long-term solutions. We all need to set gender equality KPIs and measure to ensure that progress made over towards gender equality is not lost, but is strengthened over the year. Looking at this lens, I strongly welcome the B20 Special Initiative on Women Empowerment KPIs that has been endorsed. We hope we can continue this work within B20 Women in Business Council in Indonesia. All in all, today is the right time to rebuild gender equality through transforming workplaces, redefining gender diverse leadership, and adopting innovative policy approaches to ensure equal access for women in employment and advancement while building back the economy better. And it's right now paramount that we recognize what it takes to achieve a more gender equality global economy and the advantages it provides. In the end of the day, our choices and what we believe in determining the destiny of the world. So let's get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Shinta. Thank you for your endorsement on our policy recommendation. Thank you so much. So the role of education and of science and research to foster women empowerment is fundamental. In the context of the Italian presidency of the G20, the Ministry of University and Research has the important task of contributing to the definition of a recovery strategy to support skills development and foster innovation. Those are two areas in which the business community can give a very important contribution and is ready to further develop partnership with the public institutions. That is why we are very honored to welcome to today's dialogue another distinguished representative of the Italian government, Ms. Maria Cristina Messa, Minister for University and Research, who will attend in the form of an hologram applying available technology. Allow me to join her in another studio. Here I am in the Cisco studio with the hologram of the Minister Cristina Messa, whom I would like to thank again for accepting the SIWE invitation. So, welcome. The Minister is in Rome and at the same time in Milan, thanks to the Cisco WebEx and Naumakia partner technology, which enriches collaboration with the power of hologram in a sustainable way. So, Mrs. Minister, the COVID-19 emergency has accentuated fragilities and gaps in several areas. Feminized sectors have been hit the hardest. Where do we start from?
Hello, and first of all, let me thank you for inviting me to this important G20 meeting. We start from this gap that has worsened instead of improving thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic. So the gap between women and men in terms of jobs, opportunities, and education is even worse than a few years ago. And we know that we have to start in a different way, taking into account the experience of COVID-19 and taking into account the very important recovery fund and reforms that we are in the process of doing in all Europe and in Italy as well. The gaps are both, as I said, on the educational point of view, the research point of view, but this, of course, has an impact on jobs. Women jobs are usually informal, very much informal in a high percentage of cases, and they have a lower salaries than men. Can go up to 16% lower, and this has, of course, increasing the gap and is discouraging women that already have some problem in deciding between family and jobs and careers. So we have to work on different point of views, the educational part, the research part, but also the jobs.
Thank you. Yes, indeed. But in order to bridge gaps, you spoke of involvement that concerns everyone. What can the higher education system do about this?
Higher education system has to encourage girls to start their path and their studies in the university independently from, let's say, the stereotypes that they might have undergone during their growth. So we are on a way to help families and the school to orient girls in facing whatever they can without a limitation, and also involving them in giving the same attention to the humanistic studies and to the scientific studies. University have to help in this by encouraging girls in understanding what is their vocation, independently, as I said, from their stories, and trying to make them understanding that starting a university on a STEM program, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, doesn't mean not to have to do with humanistic studies. And actually, as we started a few years ago, we have to pass to a word that involves also arts and in the acronym STEM, and talking about STEAM. This, I think, is something that might help girls in decision about their future, as well as other methods like fellowships or providing them with orienteering through their studies that help them in having the right job at the right time after their studies.
Yes, thank you. If we could jump forward 20 years, what would we hope to find?
We hope that a very subtle trend will be confirmed, because I can see that during these past 5 years, we have women heading important structures and important universities, for example, research centers such as the National Research Council. And so there is a trend in taking also the very, let's say, decision-making and important points in our society. And that is one thing. The other thing is that if we start now having a particular attention in the education of girls since the very beginning, it might be that in 20 years' time, this girl will have the same opportunities as men. The process will take more time, of course. It will take 2 or 3 generations, but at least we start.
Yes, hopefully we started, we will have the result as soon as possible. So thank you, Mrs. Minister. Unfortunately, we have running out of time. So I thank you very much on behalf of all the SIWE members. And now I leave the floor to our SIWE ambassador, Mrs. Diana Bracco.
Distinguished Ministers Bonetti and Messa, I thank you both for your contributions, which highlight a strong consistency between your work and that of the B20. I am delighted to have the opportunity to conclude our journey on women empowerment with input from the previous notable speakers who provided a complete picture of the challenges and what is needed to obtain gender parity. First, I wish to thank you all for your involvement, in particular the representatives of the 120 companies which attended every monthly meeting of this special initiative on women's empowerment. The policy document we present today is the result of excellent teamwork among task force members, Confindustria, and our knowledge partner, Accenture. Looking at our recommendations in more detail, a general consensus has emerged from the Special Initiatives Policy Paper and from the ecosystems of G20 women's empowerment engagement groups regarding priorities and objectives for building a more equal and inclusive society. Moreover, the gender issue is present in the international discourse as never before. Opportunity to tackle challenges and promote women's empowerment with effective policies and concrete measures. The Include, Reimagine, Grow policy framework is a powerful roadmap to achieving gender equity based on a policy document outlining recommendations, tools and KPI as stated by Julie Sweet. It is a framework which aims to produce a change in society, increasing the proportion of women in employment, especially in high-growth sectors, those shaping the future. The paper suggests a skills-based approach to promoting female employment, with the knowledge that the skilling and reskilling of girls and women does not end with school or with university. It is a lifelong exercise and one that must be developed at the individual, family and governmental level. The latter plays an important role. It should bring together key stakeholders to develop a common vision around how to align women's skills with the needs of the modern world and of the market. We need to end the mismatch between the supply and demand of skills. Too many job postings go unfilled due to a shortage of digital and technical skills required by companies. Here, I would like to thank Minister Cristina Messa for her efforts to promote digital and STEM skills. STEM education is the path to building the relevance and resilience of women's skills. In so doing, business-university partnerships play an important role. Gender skills imbalances have serious consequences. For instance, when the specific needs of women are overlooked in innovation, or when these imbalances risk producing and reproducing gender biases. We therefore advocate to governments to identify concrete actions to embed the gender lens at the core of innovative activity. In order to advance gender equality in research and innovation, we encourage the G20 to invest in gender medicine to ensure that women-specific health issues are properly diagnosed and treated. It is a question of science and ethics. Research in medical fields in the last 50 years has been conducted in male experimental animals and in men. But pathophysiology, clinical practice, therapy and prevention is far different in all diseases in women. The specific needs of women cannot be ignored. The pandemic has also taught us that gender parity on task forces and in senior decision-making bodies must be achieved. An analysis of COVID-19 pandemic task forces found them heavily male-dominated. This should no longer occur. The increase of women in senior decision-making roles needs to be reinforced because women are still underrepresented at the more senior levels in all sectors of society. Diversity in decision-making is not only a matter of rights, but a key economic issue and a major engine of growth and development. Multilateral agencies could play a role in reducing this gap by measuring and tracking gender reporting. Progress could be further strengthened by providing financial incentives to organizations which hire women and allow them to grow. The private sector can play a role fighting stereotypes, developing family-friendly policies, including incentives for men to take parental leaves, and promoting training to foster leadership roles for women. We have dedicated a substantial effort to KPI, aware that we cannot make true progress towards gender equity without robust data, targets, and a way to track them over time. That's why we have identified 3 KPIs to more easily track the G20 members' progress in implementing our recommendation. These KPIs are female participation in the labor force, women's percentage of unpaid work compared to men, and percentage of women in senior or middle management. I hope that these KPIs become firmly rooted and that they will act as a benchmark to trace the positive developments of women's empowerment. I thank Shinta Kamdani, the B20 Indonesia chair, for her contribution towards achieving this goal. Let me conclude by affirming that women's empowerment is a driver of growth. Now is the time to build on the momentum of the G20's work to shape a fairer future where women's skills are resilient, recognized, and fully expressed. This is a call to action for women's empowerment.
Thank you. Thank you, President. Thank you for this call to action. We have now come to an end of our final event of the Special Initiative, and we leave you with a special video we are very proud of. So thank you all for joining us online.
recovery after the pandemic will be based on labor and innovation to relaunch economic growth. Women must play a role in this recovery and cannot be left behind. Achieving this common goal is not only a question of rights and equity, but one of prosperity and sustainable growth.